Hey everybody, Ethan here, and you're on my side of the room. Today I've got my blue submarine. Love it, love it. But I'm about to love it even more because the good old zippery strings are back. Now, they're not really going away, but I'm not doing flatwounds. What I'm going to do is, what is this now? Nickel-plated rounds. I'm not plugging this brand. It's just incidental that I got them. It's a price thing. But I haven't posted the video yet because I don't know if I'm gonna. I put flatwounds on the Schecter, which sounds clickbaity. But honestly, I really like the Schecter more with the flatwounds than I did with the rounds. I don't like round-wound strings. But I was reading up on it by way of Amazon, and I was like, well, you know, this is the new bass with the strings that it came with of questionable origin. Well, this is a new bass. It's not like I bought a used, but still, I don't know what these strings are. I don't particularly care for the strings that this came with. I thought, well, instead of flats, because it's not, I don't recommend putting flats on a Stingray. You do you, but I don't think that's kind of the direction things are heading here. And I thought, well, isn't there like some kind of compromise, like to have slap-friendly strings, because this is a very slap-friendly bass, without the complete obnoxious zippery racket that you can get like with the really bright rounds. So supposedly nickel plated is the way to go, or it's baloney and I wasted my money, but I'm about to find out, and you're going to find out with me. So I'm going to take off the old strings and put the new ones on. Now, as a side note, because again, I don't know if I'm going to post that other video or not about the flatwounds on the Schecter. What I will say is I don't cut my strings, so I had to research like what scale length this was. This is 34-inch, so long scale. So I don't need extra long is the thing, and we don't want short scale either. So I want to just put the string on and then get to, you know, E as an example to start with. And once I have it strung up and once I get it to kind of settle, then tomorrow I'll come back and turn the amp on, because it's nighttime and I can't do that right now. But you're probably going to want to hear some tones. I gave you some tones of this when I was shopping for it at the store, and you heard it through a Mark bass amp. So now you'll hear it through the Harkey when I put the new strings on, is the deal. So here we go. These strings are going off. All right, I've got the E string off. Before I get going on this, one thing I want to point out as best as I can. This is a new bass, so the fretboard is pretty hydrated, I'll say. It's not dry as a bone, is what I'm getting at. What my thought was is rather than yank all the strings off and expose the fretboard, I would do that if this was bone dry, but it's not. And so because of that, I don't feel the need to treat it with any kind of fretboard treatment. But definitely, this is like an opportunity to do that. Again, I'm speaking to beginner types, but I don't think everybody really understands the thing about fretboard dryness because of the condition of used guitars that I'll see around, like on Craigslist, or I'll see it like at the actual store where it's like, that's an awfully dry fretboard for something that, that you've been using for years and years, and it tells me they're not keeping up the maintenance of their guitar or their bass, and that just tells me they probably don't know. You know, I mean, I'm not going to impugn their motives, like, you know, how lazy they are. I just don't know that they get it, that that's a thing. And so just pointing out that this is a good time to, while you're changing the strings, to look at your bass maintenance. Another one is this does not have sharp fret edges, but if it did, I do have a fret file, and I would file the fret ends if I needed to, but this feels just fine. I don't feel the need to do that. So just let you know before I get back to stringing. All right, so another thing to point out. So I don't know what brand strings these are. I don't know what the default is. We could probably assume they might be Slinkies because, you know, Ernie Ball related product. But I was looking at this, like I'm kind of getting like why they're saying that this nickel wound is like more of a compromise if you're trying to get to like less finger noise and yet still have bright tone capabilities as opposed to what you would get from flats. So this is a very coarse string. And what I'm seeing here in the, I don't think it's going to pick up in the camera, so I'm sorry. This coil is much tighter. And so I don't expect the zipperiness quite that I'm getting off of the El Cheapo string here, I'm assuming. This is not going to be confused as a flat wound by any stretch of the imagination, but between the two it is a tighter curl, as it were. So, feeling good about the string here, in terms of being a compromise, we'll say. I just restrung the bass with the nickel plateds. And so what I'm finding is there's still going to be some finger noise. That's just how it is, because they're not flats. So it's not realistic to expect no finger noise at all. There's less of it than there was with those other strings. And plus these are brand new strings, so they're going to take a little time to settle. And they should darken up a little bit because of it. Now, what I've heard is that if you're going to slap, newer strings are better, is what I hear. And then if you're going to just put this set of strings on and never change them ever again, then it's not going to be good for slapping over time, because this will get basically duller. But I'm not a slap player at the moment, so I'm not super concerned about it. Now, a couple of things I want to point out in this video before we get into like actual tones in the morning or whatever time tomorrow. What I like to do when I have to turn the tune around is when I am tuning up and I get tuned, then I'll fret the 5th fret on each string, pull on it like a bow and arrow, and let go, and then pluck it again. And what I'm doing is I'm taking the slack out of the line in such a way that this is going to be a tighter tune. It says overshooting it. But like when I hit E, I should be kind of staying at E longer than if I didn't do that. Like it'll fall out of tune faster if you don't pull that maneuver. Once again, tune to A. Fret it and give it the tug. Problem is, like, I had this problem the last time I did this on a video that I didn't post right here. Well, I already did the tug, so I'm not going to do it again. Tune up to the A, D on there, so fret the 5th fret and give it a tug. Now I'm a little off. Now I'm on. Alright, and finally, the G, I just put the string on. Alright, fret it, give it a tug. Now I'm under it. It's not going to be immediate, but over time, it's more likely that when I pick the bass up, like right off the rack, it's going to be, if not in tune, very close. So that's what I'm looking for. So they slap, they pop. Again, do I slap and pop? Questionable. I'm not going through an amp, so I don't recommend pulling this maneuver, by the way, like not being plugged in and just like dry playing the bass. It's a bad habit. I get it. I do it. You probably do it. But it's not the greatest idea in the world. You're not really truly hearing the bass for how it really is. You're hearing just the strings on the bass. And that can be useful to some degree. Like again, if I'm just wanting to know, does it slap? Yeah, it does. Does it pop? Yup. But is it truly the sound I'm going to get if I plug it in the amp? Nope. So that's the thing. Like that, this can fool you as to what things are. And again, that's even including all this string noise. Yeah, I'm not plugged in anything right now, and so that's all I have to focus on. But if I was plugged in, it'd be a different sound altogether. So even though I can't film it right now, I'm going to go plug in with headphones and check it out. And then again, during the day tomorrow, we'll get some tones off of here and hear what the nickel-plated Roundwounds did for us here. Okay, it's the next day. The strings have had time to settle. I've got this flattened out, as in like at neutral. I've got the bass at neutral. The amp at neutral. And to clarify, that would be the hard key, not my Joyo nothing amp. There's still going to be some finger noise and some zzz as I go up and down here. But it's not as bad as the strings that were on here. I'm just going to assume it was ye old rounds to start with. But I noticed between the two, the set that was on here was very coarse. And this is more of a smoother wind without being a flat wound or a half flat or half round or whatever. I didn't want to screw around with something like that because I do want this to be slappable, even if I don't slap really on this. I'm starting to get more into it like off camera. So it's a thing, it's developing, it's just gonna be a while. So one thing that this is good for, besides, you know, slapping, is because this is such a percussive style bass, is ghost notes. So yeah, I mean, I like that. It's more noticeable than my other basses. Now my Donner is a passive, the Schecter is an active, and this is an active, so it's 2 on 1. Really loving active basses. Time check. And having never had them before, it's very much an adjustment. So one of the things, speaking of adjusting things, our guitar player for the church was saying, well, why didn't you bring your new bass right to the church the day after you bought it? Well, not recommended. When it's a brand new bass in this case, it's not a good idea to like rush off to a gig with it when you don't fully understand what you've got in your hands. It seems pretty straightforward that it's like, well, what? It's volume, bass, treble, what's not to like? Well, even where I put my thumb is different on here because there's no pickup like right here, it's further back. And so because I'm more here when I play, there's nothing to latch onto but the top string, so I'm having to readjust how I play. And gig time is not the time to adjust how you play things. So you need some time to settle into your instrument, just as it needs time to settle into the new strings. So in 2 weeks, I'll be back at the church again after a weekend off. And so I'll bring this then, because by then I'll have more of a grasp of what this can and can't do and all that sort of thing. But just FYI, again, to make this as informative as I possibly can. One other thing, speaking of adjustments, not doing it now because I didn't know this was going to be an issue. When I took the strings off, this nut is really bad. the worst knot I've ever experienced in my bass playing career was the Glary. It was just god awful, and this is like the second worst. Not an excuse to not buy the bass. It's just one of those, someday I will get a Graphtec nut and replace this. But I got to measure and blah, blah, blah. So just so you know, it's a thing. That'll have to happen. The thing with the nut, besides that this is, you know, cheapo plastic, and I expect it at this price point for what this is. It'd be nice to have if it was a Graphtec, that'd be awesome, but I don't fault them for not having done that. The Schecter has a Graphtec, so there. Well, the thing about it is allegedly, like, your strings are going to be harder to keep in tune if you have a crap nut. Two, it's just, I don't think this is good to have this where it's like it's noticeably like wearing away, and that could just be bad for intonation and everything else. So again, it factors into the tuning, and also like what you sound like when you're playing. So that's the importance. Thanks to Low End Lobster, I know that the pickup's replaceable, as is the preamp. The thing is, he did an EMG, right, mod. I was watching that on his channel just to see what it was. And what he quoted price-wise, you're like well on your way to another bass. And you got to factor that in. And it also begs the question, like, if you're going to spend that kind of money on upgrading your bass, then why didn't you just buy the more expensive bass? Well, the answer is, between this and the next step up, Stingray, you weren't going to get EMG stuff. You were going to get Music Man, proprietary, whatever. And it's either better or it isn't. And as I said in the video when I was shopping for this, the $800-something Stingray did not noticeably impress me more than this did. So I don't feel the immediate need to upgrade all this. It's nice to know it's a thing, but it would be a down the road thing. Like, something has to be happening where it's like I'm just not getting the tone I need out of this, and the only way I'm going to get it is to upgrade the pickup or the preamp. I've done it with the Donner because the Donner is cheaper. I put Alnico pickups in it because it was like 30 bucks or 20 bucks even. And it was a noticeable improvement. Like, it's not a microphonic pickup anymore. So just so you know. This pickup is not microphonic. So that's why I'm like, then I'm not super worried about this being a ceramic versus an Alnico. So anyway, all right, that's enough of that. I just wanted to kind of let you know what was happening on day 2 here and give you some sound out of this instead of just me arbitrarily talking about the bass. Keep playing, keep learning, and I will catch you in the next video.